Hey, good morning, folks. This is Brian Foreman with this Campbell University Center for Church and Community, and I'm honored and thrilled to have our guest with us today, Reverend Mike Sowers, pastor of Buies Creek Baptist Church. Mike, how long have you been at Buies Creek Baptist?
So just finishing 3 years. So you're going to start fourth year here.
And there are a couple of reasons that we're excited to have Mike as a part of our conversation today. One is that Buies Creek Baptist is doing some really amazing ministry. Two, they're adjacent to our campus. And three, if you can see that fine-looking diploma right behind Mike's head, you'll see that it says Campbell University up there. And we're excited to have an alumnus who's doing such good work. Mike, thanks again for doing this. I just thought we'd have a conversation about some of the good things that are happening for you all during this time. Some of the challenges maybe that are happening, but we were talking before we started recording. It's kind of a crazy world out there, and we're all figuring out how to do ministry. In fact, Mike was doing some technical assistance, some information technology assistance for pastors early on who weren't as familiar with some of the tools that are out there. So we're grateful you were doing that. But I'm curious, Mike, when you reflect on the last couple of weeks, how have you been inspired? Let's start there. How have you been inspired by what you've seen in your church and in your community as people have kind of rallied together?
Yeah, I think some of the things that have really stuck out, the way that people have really stepped up and found new ways to do ministry that they weren't involved with, or in our case, we have some folks, we have a church partner in New York City, and many of our folks have been to New York City and been involved in ministry there. And one of the things that we have recently been involved with there has been working with a food pantry there in Brooklyn. And so when that opportunity presented itself here, people were already, at least at some level, engaged in that ministry, had been familiar with what was going on there. And so that began to be a natural fit for us as that need began to rise up pretty quickly, working with our schools. So that was a really cool thing, just off the top, that jumped right up at us. And it was almost, it's just one of those things where you hope as a pastor you make wise decisions, but sometimes the decisions get made for you. And that was one of those cases where what we'd already been doing, what we were familiar with, just came as a natural process in the fit for what we needed at this point.
Yeah, that's fantastic. It's amazing how you can just be going along in ministry and not have any idea for what it is God's preparing you for. It sounds like you guys were being pretty well prepared for a place to do ministry.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, as far as other things that have kind of given you hope in the midst of all of this, what are you grabbing hold of as a pastor, as a father, as a spouse?
Yeah, I think a few things. One, this is hope, but also probably top of my prayer list every day. A lot of our folks who are alone, that are, the church community is their life. It's their social life. It's their emotional and mental connection. And that's been really tough for me to be able to. We try all that we can to connect, phone calls, letters. Tomorrow we're actually doing this thing we're calling a honking hug parade. We're actually driving through 23 of our church members' houses tomorrow, and we've got about 20 cars, and we're just going to honk and say hello. And just the fact, just calling our seniors and letting them know we're doing that brought a smile and warmed their day up. But tomorrow, hopefully, actually being there will be even better. But just that part of it, understanding that we need to do. It's not that we haven't been doing a good job connecting, but we've been relying too much on our Sunday morning and maybe even Wednesday night, with some cases, connections, that we need to go deeper with our connections, especially with those that rely so much on their church community for for so many things, not the least of those being the emotional and mental well-being. And that's really jumped out at us at this time.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. To how we think about creative ways to connect with people, to let them know that they're loved, to let them know that they're still a vital part of the community, right? Because it would be easy to lose people during a time like this.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's the hard thing. Even when we are able to regather later on, we are fully aware, and even having conversations with some of our senior adults, they're not going to be comfortable physically coming out, even when, it's not like we're going to the governor's going to lift the order or raise the number that can gather, and they're just going to all come back. There's a lot of situations especially among our older population, they're just not going to feel comfortable coming back. And so this is a longer term thing for them, especially. And so we've got to continue to do a better job, a deeper job, a more intense job, connecting and understanding that the body of Christ is not just a gathering on Sunday morning, but so much more involved in that. And it's going to require creative ways to do that. And so we're already kind of planning out. We're making Wednesdays sort of our connection day. This week we're doing the parade. Next week we're doing a fruit and chocolate basket for all of our senior adults. And so we're just trying to do little things like and doing them intentionally so that everybody knows they're coming. We're also we're doing hot meals on Tuesdays and Thursdays for our senior adults anyway. This is just kind of adding a little layer to that. That's even more on that.
Yeah. So let me ask this question, and I want to be as careful and delicate as I can to not have this sound like it's to get the politics of this mixed in, right? But I've talked to some clergy,
Sure, yeah.
South Carolina, Georgia, some other states that are thinking about opening up, and they're really anxious about the pressure they feel from their congregants that if the state is opening back up and the governor's saying it's okay to be together, that their congregants don't expect for the church to do that as well, and they're voicing some of the same concerns that I just heard from you about. Even when all of these restrictions are lifted, there are going to be people who don't feel comfortable.
Yeah.
So are you feeling any of that from your congregation at this point? Or do you feel like people are trusting you? I mean, it's an enormous weight. Maybe that's the right question. What's that weight like for you as pastor?
Yeah, so we're trying to be proactive. I've been putting out surveys online to our folks and also emailing those. And we've gotten tremendous response back from those surveys. We're doing those through Google Forms and asking safety questions. What are some things that would make our folks feel more comfortable, more willing to come back? And so we started early because the problem now is, and a lot of churches are experiencing this, and I think more churches that aren't really thinking ahead are going to experience this. And I've been trying to encourage other pastors, if you are coming to the place where you're going to regather, you're going to have to take some what I would call extraordinary steps to make that happen. So we're already working on social distancing our sanctuary. We're using plastic tablecloths. We've used a muted color, and we've already started laying out that diagram and putting it in place in our sanctuary, so that we're following that. We've already put signs on the floor of our sanctuary that are 6 feet distancing. We were able to get hand sanitizer. We're going to be doing temperature checks. We've got, we're trying to do as much as possible, responding to the survey of what people are hoping for so that they can come back. So that it's not a pressure thing, that we're just trying to make it as as ready as possible. We're not going to open before we're ready. We're installing touchless everything in the church so that that's all ready. But the stuff with that, it just takes, I was on a waiting list for a month to get hand sanitizer and finally got it last week. So So those are the things that we want to make sure that when we are ready to gather, that we're doing it when we're ready, not just necessarily when there's a light switch turned on and say, hey, everybody can get back together. And we're getting good response to that, that it's, that we are being intentional, we're being safe. And on our crisis team, I put together a crisis team real early on, within a day or two of when Campbell actually got its first positive on that Thursday night, and that was reported out. I put together a crisis team that day because I knew things in our community would change. Because of course, once we had a positive in Harnett County, that just changed everything. So we put together a crisis team, and several folks on our crisis team are in that category where there is, a heightened risk. So we're kind of following their guide as well. So we feel like when we do gather back, we'll be able to do it. And no matter what the numbers are, we're not going off of what the government numbers are. We're going to be lower than that because we're going to follow safety protocol, not numbers. So we're going to make sure we're social distancing people row by row, so that that people feel safe in that as well. So,
yeah, Mike, if anybody ever questions why I asked you to have this conversation, that last 3 minutes is a perfect example of why I think so highly of you as a pastor and the work that you're doing, the thoughtfulness around how to care for your community and how to provide for them as they're both away from the sanctuary and the church, but also for when they come back. And that's really important. And I even think the survey that you're sending out and being proactive is phenomenal work. And I wish a lot of other clergy were thinking that same way. And I don't think that a lot of them aren't thinking that way. They haven't heard how to do it. And you're giving, in a lot of ways, you're giving a template for how to do some of this work. For instance, the tablecloth idea in the sanctuary, that's the first time I've heard that. And I'm sitting there thinking, that's brilliant. That is so smart. Why have we not thought about that as how to provide some sense for people of how to come in and rejoin their pews and their worshiping community? So thanks for that. What other, one of the other things that I heard somebody talking about recently was their concern about young people staying engaged. Are you guys finding ways to keep young people engaged?
Yeah, so we're with both our children's and our youth ministry. We've moving into trying to do some creative things on Zoom and some things on YouTube. Also, we've had our youth engaged in our hot meals. So they come in and they actually draw little notes on the hot meal clamshells. And when those go out, there's just a little note of, we miss you, we love you, different notes every week that are on that. Also, our youth are involved in our worship leadership. And so they're still coming in on Sunday mornings and being involved in worship leadership. I've told our youth minister, who's also a current Campbell Divinity School student, and also our children's minister, right now at this time, and I hesitate even saying this, and it makes me, a little bit, anyway, I just told him, I said, normally I would say the kind of content we provide is very critical and important, but right now, contact and relationships are more important than content at this point. We just want to keep people connected. So our children's minister did a cool thing the other day, did a scavenger hunt with our kids on Zoom. And so they had a list of things they were supposed to get. So they went out and did the scavenger hunt while everybody was on Zoom. And so just little things like that, trying to keep those families. Also, when we do regather, there's a lot of concerns I have when we regather. One of those is having our younger children in the same service with our older senior adults, because those contacts can really create some situations that our senior adults will be put in a really awkward spot, basically trying to distance themselves from children. So when we gather back, we're going to do a family worship time and then one or two traditional worship times based on whatever we feel like we can do safely. And we're trying to build up to that. We know that we're not going to probably be able to have Vacation Bible School this summer. We're probably not going to be able to have our youth and children's camps. And so we're going to kind of combine all of that into this family worship time over the summer to where we can engage our families in worship together, and also take care of some of those safety concerns. So we're trying to build in that as we go along, keeping them engaged. We've also been doing little packets that we've been given to our families to do crafts, to do family Bible studies. I put together a little Easter family worship guide for that. And so we're just trying to give our parents tools to be able to continue to disciple their children at home. And so in many ways, that's ideal anyway. And this is kind of pushing us there in a better way. So those are good things that have actually come out of this.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are probably a lot of good things that are going to come out of this. We have to figure out which ones to hold on to, right? So,
That's right.
because you're probably working as hard as you've ever worked, because you're learning
Yeah.
to become a video editor and
Yeah.
and putting packages together and everything else. So, I think one of the things that's really impressive is, and has been difficult for a lot of people, is that we have to also make room to grieve for some of the things that we aren't able to experience, some of the things that we have taken for granted that are gone and may or may not come back in the same way. But as a church staff, you all have been able to combine and use some of that grief, it seems like, for some pretty creative outlets for staying connected.
Yeah, it is tough. I mean, this will be one of the first times we haven't had Vacation Bible School in a long time. And for a lot of people, that's a big deal. It was a big deal for me. I loved it growing up. I mean, that was, some of my most wonderful memories as a kid were Vacation Bible School at church and things like that. But really trying to figure out at this point, and it's really good. We're in the process of it. We just finished a church consultation process for about 10 months, and now we're in sort of the implementation phase of that. The timing on this couldn't have been better for that, because what probably a lot of the things that we knew we needed to move to and questions we needed to answer and ask and all of this stuff, things that would have taken months, maybe years, are putting all of that on the table in weeks now. And so as we begin to look at regathering, restarting, and things like that, um, I told the staff the other day, I said, we've been given whiteboards, empty blank whiteboards, that most Baptist churches that are our age have never or never would have gotten. And so we need to be good stewards of that. We need to be faithful to make sure that the things that we start and do and continue fall within principles and guidelines, and understanding that we can really do these things right, and really get a jump start on where God really would want us to be. So there's a lot of personal things that I think are going to be tough during this time, emotionally and other things as well. But I think in the end, I see, for our church at least, we're going to be a lot stronger coming out of this than we were going into it. And that's I wouldn't have been able to say that 2 months ago. Somebody would have said you're going to be shut down for 2-3 months on Sunday mornings, other than online. I would have said, man, that'll be a tough spot. I'm more convinced now than ever we're going to come out of this stronger than when we went into it. Without any, I don't have any reservation about that.
Well, Mike, I asked you for 15 minutes, and I think I've taken a little bit more than that. But man, that last statement was such a powerful one. That to think about the fear that some of us may have had early on, and what we're finding is new gifts and new blessings and new tools, and dare I say that maybe some abundance that Jesus talked about. That we're finding ways to live into that. And so I am grateful for your ministry. I'm grateful for your presence in Buies Creek and all the good work that you guys are doing as a congregation. Is there any parting words you want to leave us with, or any wisdom that just is bursting to come out that we've left unsaid?
The only thing, Brian, I would just, and I've said this to a couple pastors that I've been talking with along the way. I really fear many churches are going to, this is going to really hurt a lot of churches, and it doesn't have to. I think that's the key. It doesn't have to. And I think we just need to be willing at this point to step back and say, are we longing to return to those things that we've made really idols? Or are we longing to be the church? And what I am finding, we have more people involved in ministry right now in the middle of this crisis than we did before it. And it's real easy, some pastors, to want to kind of at the end go back to sort of this, there's the pastor, there's the lay people model. And instead of releasing the gifts that God has planted in each one of us, that's in some ways scary as a pastor, but it's also exciting and can be explosive in a good way. And boy, don't miss that opportunity, because it's been a blessing to see that for me. So I don't know if those are wise words or they're just words, but that's what I would say.
Those are hopeful words, and I think those are important words that we have. So Mike, thanks for your time, and thanks again for your friendship there in Buies Creek as well.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you for all you're doing.